Today on Inspired Money.
I really think our educational system is not doing a good job at serving our children. There are so many important elements like social-emotional learning, social-emotional well-being, digital literacy, financial literacy, and even like what we were talking about earlier. I truly believe education should be purpose-driven, and that purpose should not be only tied to a GPA. That purpose has to come from the inside of a kid. What are they really passionate about? What is the problem that they are trying to solve? And I don't think we are having that conversation at all.
This is episode 119 with educator and founder of Classroom Without Walls, Dr. Addyson-Zhang. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Today's guest is Dr. Addyson-Zhang, a college professor turned entrepreneur. She's an educator and believes that the current educational system is not best serving our kids. She's not just criticizing it, though. As you're about to hear, I is a force, full of energy and passion. She's laser focused on creating better ways for kids to learn. I'm really excited about her work because if you question the value of a $40,000 to $50,000 per year college education, we need more people like I who are willing to break from convention and try new things. In this episode, you'll learn how I redefined her identity from professor to become an entrepreneur, her views on the weaknesses of our educational system today, and what new approaches might have a larger impact, and why no school can provide the personalization that kids need, so parents need to be involved. Now let's get inspired with Dr. Addyson-Zhang. Welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I think my memory is we didn't have enough money. And I grew up I was born in 1979. Now everyone knows my age. I was born in China. So at the time, China was very undeveloped. And we definitely struggled a lot with money and with my school tuition and buying food. We didn't even have enough food. And I was told by my parents to be very, very careful with how I wanted to spend my money. And the only time I was allowed to buy something for myself was during Chinese New Year. So pretty much I had to wait every single year for the Chinese New Year to come to purchase something for myself, like something small, not even big. So that was kind of my memory with money.
So today, do you still tell your kids, when I was little, I only had one toy that I could buy each year?
Yeah, I didn't even have that many toys, to be honest with you. And we were just playing outside, like no toys, playing with like stones and I don't even remember. But I didn't even have many toys. I never celebrated my birthday until I was a college student. So nowadays with my own children, and I think because I'm very conscious of how I talk to my own children, I don't want them to have any self-limiting beliefs coming to money because I had to really work on myself to deconstruct many of those self-limiting beliefs about money. So I tell my children everything is possible, and I speak very differently to them, and so that they don't grow up with the way I think about money.
What were some of those self-limiting beliefs that you really had to overcome?
Oh, like for example, like money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work really, 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 really hard to make money. And if you are not working hard, money will not come. Yeah, just pretty much. And I grew up like until my even after I came to the U.S. And after I became a college professor, I think was about 2 years ago when I started listening to podcast interviews. And that was kind of the first time I started to realize, oh my gosh, I had so many self-limiting beliefs about money. But yeah, so that was kind of my wake-up call. Just like I really had to work hard. Or at the same time, like if money comes to me easily, I started to question myself and ask myself questions like, do I really deserve the money? And I don't feel deserving. I don't feel worthy enough to receive the money, especially if the money comes to me easily. I feel like I haven't worked hard enough, really, really hard enough to earn the money.
Yes, I think that's an issue that many of us have, especially it is a conventional idea that the harder you work, the more you should make.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And now I'm very different. Yeah, I think very differently. Yeah, I truly believe first of all, after I started working on myself, deconstructing, which was very uncomfortable to deconstruct who I was and reconstruct a new set of beliefs surrounding money. And now I feel very deserving. I feel very worthy. And if money comes to me easily, I celebrate. I say, yes.
You were in higher education for, I think, a decade.
More than a decade.
More than a decade. You were an associate professor teaching classes in public relations and social media, but you're a relatively newcomer to social media. Why did you dive in as a practitioner?
Yeah, like the only reason, my journey started a few years ago at the time, and I noticed some of the fundamental flaws in our educational system. So one of the many is many teachers teaching our classes are not practitioners. Most people teaching our classes, even for those people who are teaching business, communication, really applied field of studies, are actually academics. And what I learned from that was my students was actually not learning the latest technologies, trends, tactics. So about 5 years ago, I decided to radically change how I teach my classes. And I wanted to be the change that I wished to see in the classroom. And I started to become a practitioner and teaching my classes at the same time, preaching and practicing what I was teaching in the classroom. So for example, if I asked my students to join a Twitter chat, I also joined that Twitter chat myself. If I ask my students to blog, to be active on LinkedIn, to be active on Facebook, all those things, I was also doing the same thing. And so fast forward to today, the more I was being active on social media, the more social media was changing my identity, even my professional career, even though I started my social media journey with the only very simple purpose to be a better college professor.
Was it scary for you to take that leap? Because it sounds like you had to become a student alongside your students, but just stay ahead of them enough that you were just a little bit ahead that you could teach them.
Yes. Not only was this scary, I was like, wow. Almost like I think I entered a mid-age crisis as I was reinventing myself, transitioning from being a college professor to a speaker, consultant. Now I'm building my own school. Very, very uncomfortable. And going back to what we discussed earlier, like all those self-limiting beliefs, I think for me, my only identity was being a college professor. I'm very comfortable in the classroom space, teaching my students, grading papers. I was not comfortable talking about money. I was not comfortable, becoming a speaker. I remember a few years ago, I was trying to add like the title consultant and speaker to my LinkedIn profile. I couldn't. I couldn't overcome that identity that I have become someone else. It was very, very challenging, very, very challenging.
So tell us how your experience starting, like opening up your social media accounts and how that changed your life.
I think it really helped when I was, as I shared earlier, when I started my social media journey, my goal was to be a better teacher because I saw how my students was not absorbing what I was teaching in the classroom when I was just a teacher. And I didn't have personal stories to share with my students. I guess I didn't have the passion because I was teaching by the book and it was kind of dry. So it was not very hard in that regard because I was a teacher and I'm still a teacher and I wanted to be a better teacher. So the purpose was not actually on me when I started that journey. It was to serve my students better, was to be a good example in terms of to show my students the power of social media. So I guess when the focus was not on me, it was not that challenging. It was kind of just like naturally happened. But 2 years ago, when the focus has indeed become me, I think that was a really, really challenging situation. It was really not hard when the focus was on my students trying to be a better teacher, but it was really, really challenging when the focus later indeed has become on me trying to reinvent myself to become an entrepreneur. That was the challenging part. But when I just getting started on this journey, it was not that challenging because I wanted to serve my students better.
Since you mentioned that you grew up in China, you also mentioned that there are some fundamental flaws in the U.S. education system. What are your thoughts on the education system in China compared to the United States?
Yeah, I think, growing up in China, dealing with education is extremely competitive. It was definitely not interest driven. It was by and large score driven. And what score am I going to get from this exam? Am I going to go to the school? Everyone was trying to go to a few really popular schools. I grew up in Beijing, was trying to go to those few schools in Beijing. And it was really, really competitive to the extent that we treated each other, I feel like enemies instead of like friends trying to collaborate. We were so competitive. And plus, there was such a heavy emphasis on like physics, math, chemistry. I was not really into those things. So that was also a challenging part. I did well. So I pretty much had to really push myself a lot to get to where I wanted to be. I didn't really enjoy the journey. And this is where I see a similarity between my educational experience in China and our students in the United States. And I frequently interact with students who don't really enjoy the journey of learning. I think they're more interested in the outcome, like their GPA and what can happen as a result of this GPA. So to me, that is not learning. Anyone like you and I, we are entrepreneurs. We have our own businesses. And I love learning. Like learning is so exciting. Right now, you can't see my face, but literally I'm so fired up right now. If you can see my eyes, I'm so passionate about what I do. I'm so passionate about learning. Every day I wake up in the morning, I was like, what am I going to learn today? And I want to become a better person every single hour compared to the hour before. But this is something I don't see in our students' eyes. When you think about our students, they are so young in their like early 20s. They are just starting their life. They should be passionate. They should fall in love with what they do, fall in love with life. But I don't see that. I don't see that at all.
Did you see a change in your students as you were becoming a practitioner and teaching them differently?
Oh my God, huge. And my students, they started to love my class, definitely a lot more. I started to see more passion, the way they talk about my class and sharing their knowledge with other people, a huge difference. That's why I'm such an advocate. I think professors should also become practitioners, especially those who are teaching business communication. There's no reason, there's no way to teach a class if the teacher is not a practitioner, because everything is changing so fast. I was just at a Talk Worker event last week. I did something with Adobe, so I attended a Talk Worker event. So at that event, I learned, like just on Facebook, the algorithms on Facebook changes on an hourly basis. Every single hour, it is different. So can you imagine a professor just teaching a social media class based on a textbook? What a disservice to our students. And so huge. My students, they loved it. And so a few years ago, we came to Korea. So I started teaching my classes online. Even for my online classes, I started to receive like messages from my students telling me that my online class was the very first online class that they could actually finish. I don't think it was about me. It is really about how I was delivering the content. I used live streaming. We created a Facebook group. Students, they were connected with me through Instagram. They can message me anytime. I do video response. We use emojis. We use GIFs. I was where they are, speaking the social media language. And makes a huge difference. And students, they can consume my content on the go. I have short videos, have longer videos. And yes, I made learning easier for my students. And also becoming a practitioner, I always have, hey guys, guess what happened? I have my personal example to share. I have my passion. And students, they also follow me on Instagram. They're also emotionally connected with me. So yes, huge difference.
I can hear it in your voice. You found your passion too. I've heard you talk about how important it was for you to be in Korea, to be in a new environment, and how that had a really big positive impact on you. Can you talk about that?
Totally. I don't know about you, Andy. I think for me, before we left Korea, I think for a big part of my life, maybe also as a result of being a Chinese, I was overly concerned about what other people say or think about me. And I feel like for the most part of my life was designed by my parents, by my society, and even later after I started my PhD, by my advisors. And I didn't even know, or I didn't have the courage to design my own life. I was so concerned. If I did something, I always ask myself, oh my God, what would my dean or my school or my peers, my professor, my colleague, like everybody else, what would they think about me? So coming to Korea was so liberating. It was so liberating because I didn't speak the language. I had no friend in Korea. And it was scary at the moment. But on the other hand, it was so liberating because regardless of what I do or say, nobody knew me. And it was so amazing. I loved it. So that's how I decided to completely reinvent myself. And also between the US and Korea, there were 13, 14 hours time difference. I was ahead of the schedule. I was in my own zone. So that's how I started completely to reinvent myself. And it was very challenging to begin with. And because I was literally becoming a new person that I was not familiar with. And but I did the work. I didn't give up. I overcame one more time myself, my own self-limiting beliefs. Pretty much so many things happened to me within the last 2 years and becoming a new person and becoming an entrepreneur. So it was the best decision we have ever made in our life as a family, going to a different country. And now I want to keep doing this. Now I have become location independent and I can work anywhere I want. My husband is not, but we definitely want to design our life. I think for many people, and we pursue life as an outside-in approach, right? Since we were babies, our parents told us we need to learn this, we need to do that. After we started working, our bosses, supervisors told us we needed to do this or that. So we changed our personal identity. We changed our personal needs to meet the demands of our job. But now I'm different. I want to change my job to meet my life. And I think this is totally possible to design a career that is in alignment with who we are and what we are passionate about. And I think we have to do this as an inside-out approach. And that's how we have not just money, but also happiness and fulfillment in life.
Coming up, Ai decides to start her own school, embracing mistakes, flipped classrooms, all that and so much more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/119. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Ai and other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. I'm not sure when you'll listen to this, but this episode published the week of Thanksgiving, so I want to give you some Turkey Day figures. The numbers are kind of all over the place. Let's start with the American Farm Bureau Federation's 34th annual survey of classic items found on the Thanksgiving Day dinner table. According to them, the average cost of this year's feast for 10 is $48.91, or less than $5 per person. That sounds like a major bargain. According to the same survey, 95% of Americans eat turkey on Thanksgiving at $20.80 for a 16-pound bird in 2019. 50% of Americans will also add ham to the menu, raising the average cost to $58.07. Now, Lending Tree, they surveyed 1,000 people, and their numbers came in higher. They found that hosts will spend an average of $310.17 or $31 per guest. That breaks down as follows: about $227 on food and drink, and a little over $82 on housewares like dishes, furniture, linens, and decor. Now, according to Lending Tree, nearly 3 in 10 said that hosting Thanksgiving this year will be a financial strain. Roughly the same amount will borrow money to cover costs. 20% of those who will use credit or loans to finance Thanksgiving will incur debt, meaning that they don't expect to pay off the balance by the time the bill is due. Now, when it comes to budgeting, 30% of hosts have a firm budget, 45% have a very flexible budget, and about a quarter of the hosts are willing to spend whatever it costs. If you want to read more about these surveys, I'll have links in the show notes. If you're hosting a dinner for Thanksgiving or another occasion, whether it's $50, $300 or more, here are a few things that you can do. Number 1, shop early and use coupons. Shop around to compare prices, and you might consider setting your menu based on special sales. For example, if lamb's on sale, or say beef is on sale, or maybe seafood, you can set your menu around that item. Number 2, ask your guests to bring a side. Potlucking means that the host doesn't need to shoulder the entire cost and preparation. It's also a lot of fun because you get more variety. Number 3, turn leftovers into future meals. Now, I don't know if you're into leftovers, but for me, I know that the stuffing tastes even better 2 or 3 days later. And maybe on day 4 or day 5, you really start getting tired of turkey, but you could always throw it into a casserole and bake it into something new. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. If you have questions about money or you have a comment about this show, send me a message at inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong.
I know that in academia, a tenure track position, it's safe, it's highly sought after. Can you talk a little bit about your path from professor to full-blown entrepreneur?
Yeah, even to this day, I haven't told my parents that I resigned from my job because they wouldn't be able to understand this. And a college professor, you have the respect. Yeah, you have the social status. And I worked so hard, like for my entire life, I worked so hard to become a college professor. And but I think the triggering moment for me was about actually when I was on my sabbatical. I already got my associate professor position. I was on my sabbatical. So one day I was just like, oh my God, was this going to be the rest of my life? Just repeating myself, doing things that I know I can do, writing academic publications, speaking at academic conferences, teaching classes, or doing surveys, teaching my students and working with my students. Those were the things that I knew exactly what was going to happen if I did them. And I knew. So I just feel like I was mainly repeating myself, repeating who I was, repeating my capacities. I was not growing. So that was a scary moment for me. I was like, wow, am I going to die like this? Just repeating who I was, repeating the things that I knew I could do. And I already started to ask those questions. And as I was asking those questions, and Korea came as a trigger, kind of accelerator that we left the US, went to Korea and started this journey. But before Korea, I was already asking myself those questions. So to me, being able to grow is a lot more important than being safe. And so even though right now I'm not making as much money as I was a college professor, because I just started this journey, but I'm a lot happier. It takes no energy for me to be me. I say things I wanted to say, and I do things, I work with people that I wanted to work with. And I don't have to fake it. I don't have to fake anything. And I just feel a lot more aligned, a lot happier. And now I'm building my own school. I have never felt as happy as I am today. And so it is so worth it. And every single hour I'm growing. And I love the fact that I'm actually growing instead of just repeating myself every single day. So maybe this is a mid-age crisis. I don't know. I just feel like at almost 40 years old, I didn't want to repeat myself. I didn't want to play safe anymore. I didn't want to live my life according to whoever wanted me to design my life. I want to live my life on my own terms. I want to design my own life. And most of all, I wanted to see how much potential I have. And now, like, sometimes I feel like, wow, I'm inspired by myself, seeing like how brave I am and how much potential that I have. And I think this is only the beginning. And so I'm so happy that I made that decision, even though it was a very challenging decision.
It's really, really exciting. I want to hear about the ideas that you have for a school, because I know that you started a hashtag Classroom Without Walls. You've really embraced technology. You have a live stream show where you talk to amazing guests.
I can't wait to have you on my show.
I'm looking forward to that. And I know that you're also, not only are you a professor and teacher, but you're a mom to 2 boys. So I want to hear what your views are on how can education be serving kids better? How do you want your boys to learn? How are all those ideas being incorporated into your Classroom Without Walls Academy?
I can talk about this forever. And I really think our educational system is not doing a good job at serving our children. There are so many important elements like social emotional learning, social emotional well-being, digital literacy, financial literacy, and even like what we were talking about earlier. I truly believe education should be purpose-driven. And that purpose should not be only tied to a GPA. That purpose has to come from the inside of a kid. What are they really passionate about? What is the problem that they are trying to solve? And I don't think we are having that conversation at all. So most children, they go to school, they do things because that thing is good or can give them a good career, or maybe because their teachers, their parents told them to do that. They didn't really go within to ask themselves that question. So to me, that is very important. And I love, like every time we travel, we take our children, we expose them to different environment, to be outside of their comfort zone, because it's like fish in the water. When you ask a fish in the water, what is water? The fish doesn't know. And the only way for the fish to know the water is to be outside of the water. So that is what I want my children to experience, to be outside of their familiar environment, to start to understand who they are. What is the thing that can poke their heart to make them passionate about? Maybe it is not technology. Maybe it is not education. And it is totally okay. But you need to start going within to ask yourself, to put yourself in an uncomfortable environment, to embrace failures and mistakes. When you look at our own students, they are so afraid to make a mistake. But what I teach my own children, failure means figure it out again. Try it again. And there's nothing wrong. We celebrate mistakes at our home. Like I asked Aiden, like, oh, what mistakes did you make today? And is this a good mistake? What did you learn from those mistakes? I think those are the conversations that we need to have at school. But unfortunately, like many schools, we have like, when I was teaching at a state university, we have like 300 students, 400 students. For a classroom that big, it is impossible to get to know our students to create a failure-friendly environment. So I think, institution-wise, there has to be lots of really policy changes, small classroom, and really embrace. I really love the concept of flipped classroom, meaning that students, they watch videos at home. So when they come to classrooms, they are here to embrace like coaching, to have conversations, and to embrace failures and mistakes, to try things out. The teachers are mainly like facilitators and coaches to help inspire students to discover the why within their heart, so that they love learning, so that they become passionate about figuring things out. Like, for example, for me right now, my big purpose in life right now is to really make a difference in education. So that is what wakes me up early in the morning. And because of that passion, there are so many things I don't know, but I'm willing to figure it out. But for our own students, they don't see the bigger purpose. They don't see the bigger why. Their journey is not purpose-driven. And they don't see that why, and they don't feel motivated to learn. But if they can discover the thing that makes them excited in the morning, they are willing to make mistakes to figure things out. When I watch my own children playing with Legos, whatever toys that they enjoy playing, they are so focused. They're so obsessed. They're willing to make mistakes. And we need to see the same thing in our educational environment, but we don't see that. So I think to me, that is a very important missing link in our education, and also digital literacy. And so many parents, they're so afraid of technology. And I say, like, have you ever tried this yourself? And I think a good teacher is a good role model who are actually practicing and embracing this, so that when we teach other children, it's not based on whatever this person said this or the teacher told you this, but I actually experienced this myself. And I'm sharing with you from my personal experience. I think so few teachers are actually embracing social media, digital literacy, so they cannot really tell our children the ins and outs of, like, for example, LinkedIn or Instagram. They don't even know. They haven't tried those social media platforms themselves. So they cannot really give children the freedom to explore, because they're afraid to tell them. They're afraid that their children are going to make a mistake. And so I think to solve that problem, school leaders and officials, admins, they need to help teachers to learn to embrace social media, digital literacy, because technology, YouTube, all those things, they are not going to go away. We need to figure out ways to integrate technology into our children's learning journey. Like my own children, when he was 6 years old, he started to design graphics for my show. I mean, I never use them. They're not good. But at least I showed him, Canva, you can actually use this to create some powerful images to communicate a message. I'm an Adobe education leader. I also work with Adobe, and I'm a big fan of Adobe Spark. And my son, I think my older son, he started using Adobe Spark when he was 6 years old, started to document our trips to Thailand, to Korea, to Japan, to share his stories, to practice digital storytelling. I encourage him to share his stories on Twitter. And his stories has inspired other parents and even my own undergraduate students to give this a try, to start to share their own stories. But because I'm also a practitioner, I know this thing is not as scary as many people assumed. And you just need to take an educated approach to social media. So those are some things that I feel really passionate about, and I supplement at home.
So it sounds like a willingness and openness to try all kinds of different things, to dive in and try it.
Yeah, it's like food, right? You have to let your own children to taste like pizza, rice, seaweed, kimchi, like sushi, French fries, and let them draw their own conclusion. And as parents, we need to do the same. We need to try out different things. We cannot just teach our children to do something, or even as educators, we teach our students to do something, but we ourselves, we don't embrace that. To me, that is the biggest mistake and failure in our educational system. We have so many people who fake it, right? Even as a parent, sometimes, we tell our children, oh, you can't eat chips, you cannot eat chocolate. But on the other hand, behind the door, we're binging on those things. I don't think we should do that. I think to be a good role model, we have to practice what we preach. And that is the best influence as a parent, as an educator. And I think parents should not completely outsource their children's education to a school. There's no school that is personalized enough to meet our own children's needs. And even though you send your kids to the best school, it's not personalized enough. And I think as parents, we should shoulder some of that responsibility to really observe our children, to notice what they are passionate about, and to personalize their own learning at home. And we have to try different things to give them a safe space to do the same thing.
You have a vision for an academy, and it sounds like it's part virtual, where you can watch recorded lectures or recorded lessons, but it's done in combination with experiences. What's the starting point for you? What ages of the children? And are you starting with personal branding and entrepreneurialism as like the initial focus?
Yes. So my school has a model, and I mentioned earlier, I really love the flipped classroom model. So students watch videos, self-paced, self-directed learning. So my model always has a combination of online classroom learning and in-person enrichment. So the first program is going to be in Singapore. And the reason I wanted to do this in Singapore was really to force our American students to be outside of their comfort zone, to really start to build self-awareness, to understand themselves. And also Singapore has an amazing, vibrant startup culture and business environment. And students will be taking an online class in November for this particular immersion. And then in December, they come to Singapore to work with startup companies. I also have entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs from the US, from the UK, and quite a few different countries to come to Singapore to give students talks and to work with them. And we're also visiting a number of startup companies in Singapore in technology, in education, in e-commerce, and also visiting Adobe, Microsoft, and some other US branches in Singapore. So that's kind of the model. And in the future, I want to have immersion programs throughout the year across different time zones and across the globe. And so always students take an online class first and then do the immersion program. So right now the theme is on entrepreneurship, but in the future, I want to run this as a school. We don't just talk about entrepreneurship. We can also talk about, like, for example, Chinese language. I'm just thinking about my own children. They refuse to learn Chinese because they don't want to sit in a classroom to learn. I agree. And so we want to organize a Chinese language immersion. There will be an online class and then go to China, maybe during Chinese New Year, right? And learn and experience the culture, learn this in a more immersive way. Or someone interested in food, why don't we take a trip to Paris and learn about food, take an online class and supplement that with the in-person enrichment, and then to really practice or architecture. So for this program, I want the parent to really pursue this as an educational experience. As more and more parents are working remotely, like our own family, and so parents can work anywhere they want. They can bring their own children, have this classroom without walls experience with their own children, and learn different things. They can literally personalize their curriculum. They can design their own learning. In January, I want to learn this. In February, it's too cold in the United States. We want to go to a different country. We want to go to Australia to learn that. Totally. I want to make that happen. Biology, chemistry, computer, AI, language, architecture, food. And so that is my dream. I don't know when that will happen, but that is my dream. And I want to have an app so parents can just personalize their curriculum, the countries they want to visit through that app.
Is this targeted for high school students, younger, college?
So right now, gap year students and college students.
Okay, gap year and college students. And then do you view it as supplemental to conventional education, or does it ultimately replace it?
Right now it's supplemental because I'm just starting out, and but eventually, hopefully, and I want to have this as a school so students can just come to my school and they don't ever need to graduate. This is a lifelong learning school. They can come anytime. Their parents can also join them to learn something together.
I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I think success is really a journey of becoming the best person that we can become. So right now, I love doing my work, but the best part is how this journey has transformed me. I'm a new person, I'm a different person. And to me, that is success. And that is how I understand success, is how this journey is changing me, is helping me become a better person every single day.
As a follow-up, I'm curious, how has your immediate family, what has their reaction been? And what has the reaction been among some of your colleagues in academia?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. So I think the only person who really understood me within our immediate family is my husband. And he's very supportive. I haven't told my parents, and they had no idea what I was doing every day. And I didn't tell them that I resigned from my job, and they don't speak English. So I don't think they will ever listen to this podcast, which is great. And so in terms of my coworkers, it is very interesting because I started to really talk about, making money and reinventing myself. And I also started talking about problems in our educational system. So right after I started my journey, one of my close friends blocked me on social media and completely blocked me on all the social media channels for no reason at all. At that time, it was really hard for me to accept. I was devastated. But now, I started to kind of understand. And also, I don't even think I have that many friends who are traditional educators. And most educators who talk to me are people like me, which is exactly my ideal audience. So they see the problems in our educational system. They're interested in reinventing. They're interested in doing something outside of academia. So those are kind of the people who talk to me. And traditional educators, I don't know. I think some of my posts made them really upset. But I want to encourage anyone listening to this right now. You have to own your voice. You have to have a voice. And if you want to build a community, you cannot stay neutral. You have to make a stand on something so that people can support you. So that's what I learned. And now I'm not afraid. I see the problem in our education. I talk about it. I'm very vocal and I love it. You don't have to listen to my message. You don't have to like it, but I enjoy sharing my own standpoint on education. So that's kind of, where I am now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your personal story, sharing your enthusiasm, and most importantly, innovating the educational system and method for teaching our children. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can follow you, watch your live stream show, and just keep tabs on you as you develop what you're working on?
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. And so the program I'm working on right now is a 10-day immersion program in Singapore from December 9th to December 19th. So if anyone is interested in learning more about this program and transforming your personal life or your children's personal and professional lives, so please feel free to message me. My social media handle is consistent across different social media channels. Just my name, AIADDYSONZHANG. And please feel free to message me and connect with me on different social media channels, or check out my website, which is classroomwithoutwalls.ai. Not .com, but .ai, which is my name.
That's very appropriate.
I know, right? I just love it.
Do you have an idea of what the cost will be?
Yeah, totally. So for the 10-day immersion program, it's going to be $5,500 US and covers tuition, online class. Students will also be earning Adobe certification and entrepreneurship and small business certification, and have access to LinkedIn Learning for a year for free, and also food, accommodation. You guys will be staying at a very nice hotel, have access to the speakers, everything included. And we're also going to visit Universal Studios, so tickets also included. So everything included, $5,500 US. And this is application only. Application only. I don't just take any student. I want to make sure you are ready for the challenge to be transformed. And we also have daily meditation. So it is definitely an inside out, outside in approach to education, to life, to entrepreneurship. So you can find the application link on my website.
Sounds like an extraordinary experience. Thanks so much, Ai.
I'm excited. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? My favorite money moment this week was Ai being honest, sharing with us that she's making less money at this moment than as a professor at a college. But she's also so much happier. She wakes up every day eager to start her work and making a positive impact. If you want to check out her school or support her cause, go to classroomwithoutwalls.ai. So I hope that you have or had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Let me take this opportunity to say thank you for listening. I'm grateful and appreciate you for joining me on this mission. I hope to see you in the Inspired Money Makers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.